If you've ever gone skiing, you know that ski goggles are very important. These goggles don't just keep your face warm, but they also keep wind and snow from getting into your eyes and blocking your vision. This way, you can always make sure you're following the right path. Speaking of following the right path, today's true story in the Bible tells us about Jesus calling his disciples to a very important mission, following him.
Jesus was teaching a crowd when he saw two boats by the lake. The fishermen had left the boats and were washing their nets after a long night of fishing, but not catching anything. Jesus got into one of the boats and called out to Peter, who was one of the fishermen. He told Peter to take the boat out to deep water and put out the nets to catch some fish. This probably sounded crazy to Peter because they used nets made of linen that fish could see and avoid during the day, which is why they fished at night. What made it sound even more crazy is that they used nets which worked best in shallow water, not deep water. He even told Jesus that he and the other fishermen had been fishing all night and caught nothing. They caught so many fish that their nets started to break, and they had to call the other fishermen to come in the other boat and help them. When Peter saw this, he was amazed, and he realized that Jesus was holy and much different from him. He felt convicted over his sin and fell down at the feet of Jesus, telling him to leave him because of how sinful he was. But Jesus told him not to be afraid, and that he would now be a fisher of men, meaning that he would tell people about Jesus and help them see their need for him. When the fishermen had brought their boats back to land, they left everything behind and followed him. Later on, Jesus went out and saw a tax collector named Matthew sitting at the tax booth. His name was Levi, and his name in Greek was Matthew. This was not a person that people liked or wanted to hang out with. Most tax collectors were hated because they not only took your money and gave it to the government, but many of them were corrupt people who took extra taxes to keep for themselves. Jesus went up to Matthew at the tax booth and said to him, "Follow me." Matthew got up, left everything behind, and followed Jesus. Matthew made a great feast for Jesus at his house and invited other tax collectors and friends to come. The Pharisees, who were the religious leaders of the day, complained about how Jesus' disciples were eating with tax collectors.
The Pharisees did not see themselves as sinners. They saw themselves as better than others who did not follow God's law as well as they did, and they thought people should clean up their lives before they could truly worship God. Jesus said to the Pharisees that he came not for the people who were righteous, but to call sinners to turn from their sin and follow him. Jesus wasn't saying that the Pharisees were more righteous than others, even though they thought they were. He was saying that until someone recognizes their sin and realizes how much they need Jesus, like Peter did in the boat, their lives would not be changed.
And sinners. Later on, Jesus went up on a mountain to pray all through the night. When the day came, he called his disciples and chose 12 of them to be his closest companions. The 12 were Peter the fisherman, Matthew, or Levi, the tax collector, Andrew, James, John, Philip, Bartholomew, Thomas, James, Simon, Judas, son of James, and Judas Iscariot.
Jesus did not come for people who are perfect so that he could tell them good job, especially since no one has ever lived a perfect life except for Jesus. He came to save people from their sin and make a way for all people to have a restored relationship with God again. Jesus calls all people to follow him. It doesn't matter how much you know or what you've done, anyone can accept the call to follow Jesus. We don't have to fix our lives or change anything about ourselves to start following Jesus. All that is needed to follow Jesus is to believe the gospel and trust in him for salvation and forgiveness.